Hey, one more thing before you go. Have you ever wondered about the deeper meaning of existence? What if the key to understanding our reality lies in the intersection of mindful living, meditation, and ancient philosophies? Stay tuned. We're going to answer these questions and more. We have a conversation with an individual that studies both Eastern and Western philosophies and combines them into a unique opportunity for us to move our lives forward in a very positive way. I'm your host, Michael Hurst. Welcome to One More Thing Before You Go. Our guest today is Rudy Daniel. He's here to help us explore these profound questions. Rudy's an author, an entrepreneur, and a practical philosopher. He's passionate about mindful living and meditation, consciousness, and his nature of reality. His journey of self exploration began in his mid-30s, leading him to delve into both Eastern and Western philosophies, including Hinduism, Buddhism, Zen, and Taoism, as well as Western philosophy, science, and the arts. We have a lot in common. Rudy recently co founded a mindfulness app called Affirmate, which uniquely integrates your favorite personal items into mindfulness practices, transforming them into powerful reminders to help maintain a mindful state throughout the day, something we should all practice each and every day. Through this extensive reading and various mindfulness practices, Rudy has discovered a deeper connection with the universe that has transformed his perception of life. Today, we dive into Rudy's journey, his insights, his mindful living, and how we can all find a deeper connection with the universe. Welcome to the show, Rudy.
Michael, thank you very much.
What an amazing journey that you've got.
Well, yeah, it's still developing. It's not the end, hopefully.
Aren't we all? We all. I think it's nice because the life gives us an opportunity to move forward. A life gives us an opportunity each and every day to make a choice to experience life from various perspectives, and it's a gift every day, isn't it?
100%. And um, as you become more mindful, it gains more meaning and becomes more profound every single day.
That's a fact. I like to start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in the Soviet Union, um, which today is just a country called Armenia, but back then it was the Soviet Union. And I grew up there until the age of 7. And actually, I remember that my first questions about the mysteries of life began there. I used to have a lot of great mystical experience as a child and seeing the world as something profound. And it was a lot of fun, really.
It is. I think that we have, no matter where we come up, where we come from, where we have grown up. I think as a child, we have the opportunity to, or at least I think society doesn't give credit enough for us as children to understand that we are more open to the realities of the universe and what exists out here. I think that society and cultures kind of closed that down a little bit, which is a little unfortunate. That's nice that you recommended it. Um, as you grew up, did you go to college, university?
Um, no, I didn't. I found myself pulled more and more towards building stuff.
Mm.
And I was trying to become an entrepreneur, which I understood that is it's a valid profession, as all professions, and you must study it. But there is no university or course per se that can create a good entrepreneur. Maybe give you just some theoretical basics. So what I've decided to do is just go ahead and start building things, and never really got interested by the academic world back then, at least.
Well,
Today I find it more appealing.
life experience is a education within itself, I think that we as human beings love to learn, and we do observe, and we have the ability to create our environment the way we want to fit into it. And life experience is I think, a catalyst in regard to growing and constantly growing. Another,
Sorry.
that's okay. Like I said, this is life, right? We have dogs. What inspired you to? I know you that. What inspired you to start your journey in your mid 30s? Because from your bio, I see you kind of really started this journey that you're on right now from a spiritual perspective, from a philosophical perspective, in your mid 30s. Was there any event or life experience that kind of thrust you into that?
Yeah, and I loved what you said about life experience because basically my philosophy is that you need to test out your philosophy. So all of my philosophies are based on experience rather than belief, and I think that validating notions and ideas and concepts based on experience is the best thing we can do. And this is why life experience is so important.
Yeah.
A lot of people are looking for empirical evidence in this regard and saying, okay, show me the numbers, but it's purely individual, and we tend to reduce it to something that is not that significant and something secondary to the reality we find ourselves in. But it is quite strange because it's the only thing we have. We have life experience, and also when you have a life experience as a child, so as you said, society tends not to find it as something valid but more as something amusing or cute that children do. But um, I think that children have this naive approach to life. They're not yet been conditioned with certain filters or biases or understandings about life that we as adults have. And we develop some sort of cynical approach to life, in which we try to validate life with symbols of language or numbers. And we try to describe reality through things that we invented. So it's a paradox. And what triggered me was basically the childhood that I had, in which I saw this magic, and I saw the universe as a place of wonder, of profound meaning, of exploration, of mystery. And I kind of lost it throughout the period of growing up. And in a certain time during my mid 30s, I kind of realized that there was nothing new for me, and this whole life is becoming a drag. And you couldn't really offer me anything that would trigger my imagination or trigger my passion for life. And I kind of began to. It was like a spiral going down of seeing life as something insignificant and something that is quite mechanical, and maybe something not worth doing. And because of this kind of way of thinking, I was spiraling down um, towards my essence. In a way, there's a saying that suffering is grace. So I guess that in this regard, it was true because it triggered those questions I've left in my childhood of what is this place, what is the nature of reality, who are we, who am I, and I would say that this spiraling down of feeling that life is some sort of a um, drag or something that is not really worth my um, time and effort anymore. I guess these kind of things triggered back the questions I've left behind, and it got me to this beautiful journey of rediscovering the naivete of life, if you like, the way of looking at things that is forgotten uh, by most adults, I believe.
Yeah, I think that we, sometimes forget. Uh, I think we all have that question deep within our soul. Actually, sometimes we have to just kind of open that door: is who I am, where I'm from, why am I here, and the vastness of the universe and what does exist here, and how we play a part in it. I have been on that journey myself in regard to those. Always question in the past. Why am I here? What am I doing? And what part of existence, you am I? And whether or not there's a larger facet to the spiritualism. I grew up Catholic, but I'm not Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic. I'm more spiritual. I believe in the universe. I believe in the connectiveness of that we're all connected in that regard, and that we come from that source basically, and that we're all connected. And when we connect with those individuals that are on the same type of journey, it allows us to get a deeper perspective of life itself and why we're here. Um, if I can ask you, the uh, exploration, and we mentioned it earlier in the opening for you. You've explored both Eastern traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism. How did your exploration of like Eastern traditions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism influence your perception of life? You had this awakening and you realized that you wanted to get a little bit deeper. Did you start with Eastern traditions like that?
Well, no, I began with what is most familiar to us in the West, which was the theology we know of the Bible and the New Testament and Islam and religions from our area. And I began exploring them. Um, I was exploring them for quite a while and couldn't really find anything that was too compelling for me. I mean, as I delved deep into the teachings of those religions, I realized that there are two ways you can look at them. You can look at them literally, which made no sense historically or in any sort of um, logical kind of logical evidence that you can withdraw from there. Uh, but you could also look at it metaphorically, right? So if you make the subtle change of looking at theology with a metaphorical kind of point of view, and you don't take everything literally, things tend to fall into places much more subtly. And as I did that, I found out about Eastern teachings, mainly beginning with the Hinduism and Buddhism. And while studying them, I realized that they had put it in a much more subtle way because they didn't have the cultural context that we had here in the West, starting from the Middle East. So all the texts that we have originated together with the culture we had back in the day, and it influenced the teachings quite heavily. And this is why sometimes you can read the teachings of Jesus, for example, and it looks very similar to teachings of the Buddha or teachings that you find in Hinduism, because once Christianity, for example, does it pretty well. It goes to the mystical parts of their interpretation, and that just saying what I just said, looking at this from a metaphorical point of view and not taking it literally, that you find these similarities to Eastern philosophies. Well, obviously, Eastern philosophy and Eastern way of thought is older than our Western theology, which I believe is based upon the Eastern mythology and theology. And when I delve into those teachings, I found that um, people back then were really smart, and they investigated the questions of reality pretty well. And if you think about people living 3 4 thousand years 5,000 years ago, I mean, some of those teachings, their dates cannot be verified, and maybe they're even older, no one knows. But even if you look 3 4 thousand years ago and you read what those texts are saying, it is difficult to comprehend that so many years have passed by and those are still valid. Not just valid, but they are profound, very profound, um, even for our minds today, even for our modern minds. So when I realized that, I began investigating more and more about the culture of India and China, and to see what kind of ideas they explored. And they're dealing a lot with, the Chinese are dealing a lot with time, and they're dealing with reality as some sort of a natural organism, they call the Tao, or metaphorical organism. And the Hindus look at the world as more of a, like a play, like a drama, that is played by the Godhead. So different theories, though, but they speak of the same, in different perspectives. So I find this philosophy is very subtle, but I must say that for our Western mind, it's quite difficult to comprehend. So if you just grab a book out of context,
Mm.
just read it, it will sound like nonsense to you. And I would suggest that it will be the same if you give the Bible to a Hindu or a Chinese. It will be pretty much the same.
Well, it's interesting because they obviously have the similarities, but they have differences, but they also have the similarities, like you just said. And I find that even the Bible was, and we won't go down that road too far, but what I've learned when I was studying theology and so forth, that the Bible was written by man 50 years after Jesus was even here. And then those stories were passed down and passed down and passed down. And then you have like King James made his own version. Everybody makes their own version. They take in what they don't like, they put in what they do like, and these kind of things. Do you find that in the Eastern philosophies? Do you find that happening the same way?
No, because they have different motivation. So if you read the Bible, as you said, that there are a lot of versions, and if you read it carefully, you can see that it's modified in a way that implies that there is some sort of higher power that is controlling the universe, some sort of cosmic lawmaker. And we are all bowed to this law, and nobody knows what he's doing and why he's doing it, but we all should be kind of afraid and do as we told. So it's very human-like, if you really think about it, a way of control and structuring systems of hierarchy. But the motivation of the Chinese and the Hindu was different. And even I'm not suggesting that those texts that you are reading are fully original, and maybe they had some changes. I would say that maybe it's certain that they had changes, even changes that are lost in translation. Just like the way we say meditation in English, and we think that this is the same kind of word um, in India, which is absolutely not the same kind of word and not the same meaning. But the motivation itself behind the theology and the mythology of Eastern religions is not building a hierarchy around the idea of God, but rather trying to make people understand that they are God, which is kind of non governmental way of uh, teaching theology, which is very different from our way of teaching theology. So
Wow.
even if there are differences, the motivation is very, very different.
Very different. Yeah, I could see that. In the little bit that I've studied both of Buddhism and Taoism, I've not studied Hindu that much in my journey, but the other two that I have, I believe in. I mean, even with the Chinese aspect of it, I use Eastern medicine to heal me in combination with Western medicine. And the Western medicine that they had me on, 9 different drugs to help me with some issues that I was having, was basically killing me. Whereas the Eastern medicine, when I get into that, into the Chinese methodology for healing in using herbs and meditation, which again you say in different different areas, it might be titled differently, but the mindful aspect of living that we're going to talk about here in a moment allowed me to create the environment for me to heal much better than I did strictly with Western medicine, for example. The implementation or the incorporation of Eastern philosophies in medicine for healing allowed me to get out of a wheelchair and walk, as far as I'm concerned. In combination, I had to have operations and things like that, which obviously were a necessity for me to be able to achieve what I'm doing. But my healing aspect, I healed up 6 weeks from, on an average, 6 to 8 weeks earlier than typical standard American patients going through the same thing. And I did that through mindful living, which I learned from Eastern philosophy, which, has helped me immensely.
That's amazing. And I think also you touched on a very important point: the difference between the Western idea of a body, for example, and the Eastern idea of a body. So, the Eastern idea of a body is as body as organism, and in an organism you cannot cut off pieces and expect that the organism will behave the same way it behaved before. Just like a mechanism, this is the difference between an organism and a mechanism. And the Western mind sort of cuts off things. The intellect of the Western mind is very sharp, so we are used to getting rid of things and killing things so they will not disturb us even in our own body, while the Chinese approach would be look at the body as an organism and do not cut anything from the body that is unnecessary, but try to heal it with different ways, through mindfulness or through diet, or through, it's a whole culture, but it emphasizes the great difference that we have.
Yes, and it's interesting because once you adopt that methodology, once you adopt that mindful living, it stays with you, and I still, it did change my diet. You brought that up. I changed my diet, I changed the way I eat, what I put in my body. I've changed the way I get up in the morning, what I do things. My wife and I take time out on the back porch. In the mornings we sit back there and have a cup of tea and close our eyes. She does yoga back there so that we can connect with nature, this kind of a thing. And it allows us to start our day better. It allows us to start our day in a positive way. And, we hear the birds, especially in the springtime, of course, and partially through the summer because sometimes here in Arizona it gets way too hot. You don't find as many birds and animals out there. But, in the fall, the spring, even in the winter here, you get to connect with nature and you get to define mindful living. You don't have to put all the emphasis on, working ourselves to death, so to speak, and taking the time and appreciating what we have. So, in regards to that, I know that you talk about mindful living, and we just kind of briefly touched on it. How do you define mindful living, and what are some practical ways that we can incorporate that? I do meditation, as I said. I eat properly. I take care of my body as well as my mind, or I try to. Can you help us understand that? How do you define that?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that maybe let's define the terminology first. So, mindfulness and meditation are basically, for most people, are used synonymously. So, it's kind of a misconception that it is the same thing. So let's clarify what is what. So, meditation is a old Eastern practice dating thousands of years back. which includes the quieting of the mind um, in order to get to an altered state of consciousness. This is meditation. In the regular way that we think of meditation in the West is thinking of nothing or being just absolutely still, or in other words, forcing the mind to quiet down. Well, this is quite impossible. Um, Anyone that has a mind will know that forcing your mind isn't the way to do it, because if we could do that, we would lead a happy life. All you would do is have happy thoughts, happy emotions, and you would be perfect. But this isn't the case. And most people that try to meditate close their eyes and sit still for 10 minutes, soon realize that it's a mission impossible. And instead of getting um, a sensation of well-being and connection to the universe, to yourself, you end up with um, disturbing thoughts, or thoughts about, well, this isn't working, or is it hot in here or cold in here, and am I doing this right? And usually people waste their time trying to meditate in this way. Um, and what mindfulness is basically the backdrop of all practices. Some people call it spiritual practices, some people call it material practices. I just call it practices. For me, it's the same thing. So, mindfulness is the backdrop of all methods. It could be meditation, it could be sound healing, it could be Zen sitting, it could be poetry, it could be cooking, it could be really anything. And once you understand that mindfulness is merely a point of view, then you can take it to any aspect of your life. So it sounds simple, but it's more difficult to integrate because we are used to live and think in a certain way. And as we discussed before, the adult becomes more and more cynical and loses his naive view of the world. Um, so, what is mindfulness? Let's say, as you beautifully described, you're sitting with your wife and you're enjoying nature on the porch, on the balcony. So, a lot of people, when they drink their morning coffee, they just kind of pouring it down the drain, and get this caffeine in and just to wake up. It's something merely mechanical to meet a certain need. So the way to drink your coffee mindfully would be holding the coffee in your hand, feeling the sensation of the warmth of the cup, smelling the aroma of the coffee. And once you've taken a sip, you feel the texture on your tongue and inside your mouth. And when you swallow the coffee, you feel it going down your throat and filling you up. And all of the different sensation that it does. Or in other words, mindfulness is being totally aware of yourself and totally aware of the situation around you and of the world. So that being said, it's quite trivial, really, to be aware of yourself, but we forget it. We forgot it when we grew up. When we were kids, it was the only thing we know. We were just aware of ourselves. We were pure subjectivity, and this is the way we used to experience the world. Now, the way to live mindfully is starting with small things. So, as I just described, the coffee ritual,
Yeah.
you can go ahead and find any ritual that you find pleasing, at least to get started, like cookery, or it could be, well, for me, for example, I'm a musician, and I play the guitar and sing. So, this is mindfulness for me. I'm just playing, and when I'm playing, I'm playing. I'm not doing anything else. I'm just involved 100% in playing. Or you can do breathing. When you're breathing, just be immersed in the practice of breathing. Totally and intensely be aware of the moment that you're experiencing when you breathe. You breathe in, you breathe out, but really feel what it does to your body. Really try to understand and be aware of all of the little subtle motions that your body does when you breathe. And once you do that, it opens a crack in reality with time, and the crack expands and expands and expands until you find the naivete that you lost along the way. And once you see the world in a naive way, you can start seeing the profoundness of it, the beauty of it, the meaning that it holds. And I believe that Jesus said that you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven unless you become as a child. So this what we were discussing this before when I said that you can read the Bible literally, and then you think, well, how am I to become a child? I'm grown up. But if you read it metaphorically, you can understand that being a child is being naive. And when you are once more naive, the spectrum of sensitivity is expanding, and you are experiencing a part of reality you didn't think was even possible. Um, and this is mindful living, and I really trying to convey to people: start small with small rituals. Do not go and try to meditate because it will only bring the motivation down. You will not know what you're doing. It's like trying to be proficient in something that you have no chance unless you have the cultural context, you have the years of training, and you have the total understanding of what are you doing. So if you're not doing this correctly, you will find nothing in there. If you have no idea of how to deal with your body, you will come to a gym without a trainer, and you will do all kinds of unnecessary exercises, and you will probably hurt yourself, and you will say, well, there's not much in the gym idea anyway. So this is yeah
Yeah.
so this is mindful living for me,
Yeah,
and the difference
I
between.
think that you explain that very profoundly. I think that we as an individual, we as a society need to slow down. The Western philosophy is, you, especially here, you are expected as you grow up to get a job and work 8 to 5 and get married, get kids, get your house, picket fence. Everything is as described. You go to work, you show up on time, you get a 30-minute lunch, you go back to work, and you dedicate all your time there. And then, when you come home, you may get a chance to have some dinner, watch a little TV, go to bed, and get up and do it all over again. I think we all get caught up in that momentum with regard to that sometimes we forget that we have the opportunity to be that naive child again and realize that we have to be more mindful of what we have and where we're at in this world and take those moments to really be grateful that we can experience them from that perspective. Uh, it was amazing what you had said. Can you describe maybe a moment or an experience that like significantly transformed your understanding of this consciousness? How did you come? I mean, you're helping us to understand about taking a piece at a time. Was there a moment or an experience that actually catapulted you to get this better understanding, or did you just learn it along the way?
Well, it's not just like one moment. As I said, once the crack is you have a little crack, a little doubt that you feel, not intellectually think, but feel that life is more than what it seems. And once this doubt begins to build in one, um, it expands. And with time, it's very difficult to talk about these kind of things. It's like the finger pointing to the moon, which is not the moon. It's just the finger pointing to the moon. So it's really difficult to say. Try to. I know that a lot of people are trying to find answers, including myself. When I was reading extensively all these teachings, I was trying to find that secret ingredient of um, how to lead this sort of life, but I haven't found it. And the reason I hadn't found it then when I read it is because I was looking for it. And this is a kind of a paradox. So I would say do not look for the specific experience that, as you mentioned, could catapult you or get you to understand the world in a profound way. Try to do the small things and trust in the process that it will happen to you. And if I had to give an example, I would use the gym analogy because it's quite simple to understand. If you would go to a gym and you would ask someone who is built very well and is ripped, and you look up to him and say, well, that's the kind of person I want to be, body wise. So you will ask him, what did you do? And obviously it's a process. They can describe anything specific, really. So once you begin to lead your life in a more mindful way, um, these kind of things, these realizations, they happen on their own accord. It's not something that one can bring by force. In the Chinese theology, in Taoism, there is a thing called Wu Wei. I guess you are familiar with that. So that basically means without forcing. So the way to lead an organic life is do not force anything. Try to realize that the nature of reality is a flux, is a certain flow. You can make an analogy to a river and say, if you're in a river that's going downstream, you don't want to resist because this way you will drown faster if you resist. And you don't want also to flow like a leaf because that way you can crash on obstacles on the way, but rather you recognize the essential power of the flux or the essential power of the river, the river, I mean, metaphorical river of life itself. And then you build your life around the art of not forcing and leading a beautiful life. And it just uh, reveals itself to you. There is no need to make any significant efforts to discover these sort of understandings.
Yeah, I think that it's. I remember watching I think with Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee had a glass of water in front of him, and he was telling everybody how to be the water.
Yeah,
You know, you can't push against it. You can, you know, it conforms the way it needs to conform, allowing it to exist from that. Is that kind of a little bit of what you mean?
yeah, exactly. So we said be like water because water can't shape itself into any object. So basically, it's the same kind of understanding. And obviously,
Mhm.
Bruce Lee comes from a culture which is it is well rooted. This idea it
Within
is
all
new
that.
for us, but for the Chinese, it's a common thing.
Yeah, exactly. I was grateful enough in my journey through my health issues and everything else that I met several Chinese individuals and Korean that have helped me through my journey in understanding that philosophy, which again helps me to heal myself and to maintain that healing in such a way that I don't. I'm not on any medication for. I have severe rheumatoid arthritis and some other things that developed after my injuries and the operations. And prior to that, I went from 170 pounds down to 100 pounds because of all the drugs I had me on. And it changes your life when you start understanding that philosophy and how to be more mindful, how to be able to understand how we fit into everything and to adapt when you need to adapt and so forth. Do you see a relationship between science and spirituality? I mean, science is what I just spoke about. I had to have I had necessary operations in regard to my condition because I got hit by a car. I got crushed between my patrol car and the guy's suspect's vehicle. So obviously, science was the operations, and spirituality in that context. You know,
Yes,
that might be the right question, I guess. But do you see a relationship between science and spirituality?
yes, of course. It depends on what level we want to discuss this question. Because in my point of view, there is no such thing as spirituality. everything I see in the world is both spiritual and material. So it's the same kind of thing. I don't make a difference between them, and I don't consider the path that I have taken as a spiritual path. It's rather an experimental path of trying to understand life. And I think that philosophy, in its essence, is the root of science because it's the curiosity of man towards the universe. I think it's the most basic scientific exploration one can do, and thus I feel that it is very much related and it's very much the same thing. And people like to make this distinction because I feel that most people are intellectually lazy in investigating this kind of questions and getting to the root, but they rather, quote some uh, people or read this summary of a book and say that this is scientific and this is spiritual, and etc. And basically, this is the same thing, and we can look at it from various angles of what is what. I think in I think what we need to do is take the experimental approach. What is validated by experience and what resonates is true, and what's not is not.
That's a good approach. I think that we understand the reality of our existence and what we're doing here to a certain extent, but the inquisitive portion of our minds and our hearts and our souls needs to keep that door open to understand that there's still a journey that we're continuing on. At least from my perspective, I think that we're constantly on this journey of opening that door and walking the path. It's not something you can just say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You actually have to do it. Actually have to do it. What advice would you give someone, just beginning their journey in mindfulness and self-exploration? Because I hadn't thought about up until this conversation. I hadn't thought about the connection between meditation and mindfulness because I do meditate, but I've been doing it for such a long time now, so I know how to go to my place in my mind and in my body that allows me to kind of shut everything down and be able to focus on things and be able to concentrate from that perspective to give my mind, my body, and my soul a chance to connect. But I know that not everybody can do that.
Yes, yes, and as you said, it took you years, and it also depends on what kind of mind you have. Some people it will take 10 years, some people it will take 30 years, some people it will take a day.
Yeah.
It's very different, but most people cannot handle meditation in the way that it should be done. And I feel that per your question, what would be my advice for people starting out or want to explore what is mindful living all about? I would say the most important thing that you need to remember is that you must remain a student. You must remain a student. You must have the standpoint of you don't know until you know. When I say no, I'm not talking about the certain knowledge of I read it somewhere and it's validated by different people, and therefore I buy into this idea. What I'm speaking about is like when you're thirsty, you don't need any articulation, or when you're hurt, you don't need any articulation. So you must know it by experience. And I would say for this, you must always stay a student of life. And this is the only way you can truly uncover and unveil a lot of interesting things, and also not being trapped in the position of being a teacher. Because once you have become a teacher, you have put boundaries, metaphysical boundaries, physical boundaries on yourself, on your notion, on your knowledge. And life is a flux, and we always change our identities, our personas, our ideas. And then if you get rigid with the way you structured your belief system as some sort of a teacher of some sort, you're now in a very bad place where life will shake you up and you will have to admit that that it's nonsense. So I would say be always in the position of a student. A student have no problems. student can always say, well, I'm exploring, rather than say, I know the truth, follow me, this is the way, etc.
Yeah, I agree with that. As I said, I think that we're always on that journey. We're always walking that path. We always have to be aware and keep our eyes and our hearts, our soul open to that. I know you created an app and you also wrote a book. What came first, the book or the app?
um, the app came first as an idea. Well, it wasn't quite an idea, it was a dream that I saw. I have a lot of vivid dreams, and it was a very vivid dream where I saw a new path to mindfulness, and I thought that it would be very beneficial for people. And the book came after, but the actual release of the app was after the book. So let's say that their timelines
Mm,
sort of overlap, I would say.
intertwined, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, look, in today's society, when everybody wants instant gratification, I think we all need a little help along the way in regard to, especially when it comes to our mind, body, and soul, and how we're trying to connect them and to integrate them into our existence, and how to take that. Tell me more about the app, please. I think it's called Affirmative or
So
Affirmate.
the app is called
Affirmate.
Affirmate. Yeah, yeah, you're right. The app is called Affirmate, and we released the app. Uh, well, the first version of the app a few months ago with the first practice, which you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, which is basically the way to establish a tangible connection between a cherished item like a ring or a necklace or crystal or anything personal to you, to a quick 90-second meditation practice, which involves auditorial and visual experience. And this was the practice that I saw in my dream. I had the understanding that we need some anchor, we need some tangible connection to our intentions. And this was the way that me and my co-founder Roy, we saw the vision from the dream, and then it became reality. And now we're actually in the place where we have four novel practices for mindfulness. And the whole notion, the whole idea behind Affirmate is what we have discussed is the Western approach to mindfulness should be different than what we have imported from the East as meditation, especially in the digital realm where you have little context of how to do it. We feel that the classic meditation apps are some sort of a schooling system for something that needs much more context, and thus people find it not very effective. So we emphasize um, the new generation way of interacting in a way of understanding. Part of this understanding is, like you said, it's an instant gratification. So in a way, we're using the tools that the West has to offer, and mixing it up with mindful living. So Affirmate is all about short and engaging mindfulness practices that you can do throughout the day, and it's some sort of a portal that you go into to do your mindfulness. And we have various practices that you can start in the morning and finish just before you go to sleep, and in very interesting areas that emphasizes sounds and visuals, and it's very playful and fun.
That,
So far people enjoy it, and hopefully we can continue developing the way that we think mindfulness should be emphasized, and create a more mindful society.
I think a mindful society is beneficial to everyone that belongs to it. It gives us, an
Sure.
opportunity to connect with each other and to also be collectively be mindful about what we can do for ourselves and what we can do to help others in a positive way. You guys have an update coming soon?
Yeah, so it's about to be any day now, and you can go to any of the platform on Android or iOS and just look for Affirmate mindfulness tool, or you can go to our website, which is at affirmate.app. And also, you can drop us a contact form if you have any ideas or suggestions. If you want to reach out, if you want to clarify some of the practices of the methods, we'll be happy to answer, because we feel that it's very important to engage with the community of mindful living people in order to make it easier, and to help as much people as we can.
Tell me about your book, The Mask of the Mind.
Yeah, so Behind the Mask, Beyond the Mind is basically the first book that I wrote, which describes my journey through life through almost 40 years now of being on this planet. Through an experimental point of view, I describe my childhood throughout my adolescence and as I became a man, and all the struggles I have. So it's kind of a dialogue between the person that goes through these experiences and the reader, which is presented with these thought-provoking questions, and the reader needs to sit with themselves and ponder them. And I'm not laying out any new doctrines or trying to convert you or convince you. I'm just kind of poking at you and showing you the
Right.
paradoxes about the way you think, the way you perceive life. And through these paradoxes, through these metaphors, through these storytellings, uh, people can find a point for them, an anchor for them, uh, to start their own journey through a journey of someone who experienced it. So this is basically what is the book about, and yeah, hopefully in the future I will elaborate more of my ideas in books to come. But now I'm 100% focused on um, mindful living through the Affirmate app.
But does the book correlate with the app?
For sure, it's emphasizing the ideas that the book has.
Mm.
All the ideas of the book are around mindful living, but through a story, my personal story.
Right.
But the ideas that you might pick up from the book, they are well represented in the app.
Very cool. Very cool. And I'll make sure that all those are in the show notes, the links to your website and links to the app and
And
everything.
thank you so much, by the way, of letting me talk about it and present it. Thank you
Well,
very much for that, Michael.
it's an amazing conversation. I mean, your journey in itself is something that obviously we all wish we could reach a point in our life, in our own journey, to be able to recognize what you've recognized on yours. You know, it gives us a chance to understand that we are human, but we also have an existence here that needs to, be given a broader opportunity to continue on a positive way. And I think that, we've been able to hopefully through this conversation inspire and motivate some people in order to achieve that.
Amen.
Absolutely. Well, this this is Rudy. This has been, as I just said, an amazing conversation. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. I think that what you're doing for the world is a very positive thing. It is one. This is one more thing before you go. So before we go, do you have any words of wisdom you can share?
I would just like to repeat what I said. I think it's very important and sometimes missed. Be a student of life. Don't be a teacher.
Those are brilliant words of wisdom. We should put that on a little sticky note and put it right in front of us on the computer so we can remind ourselves every day. Well, Rudy,
Thank you very much.
listen, it's been great to having this conversation. I'm so glad that you're part of this world, and thank you very much for being a part of one more thing before you go. And I hope we can have another conversation down the road.
For sure. And I wish you a beautiful day and a great week ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. For everyone
Thank you
else
so
out there,
much.
please make sure you understand the show notes will have all the contact information for Rudy and how to get a hold of him. His Instagram is right here on the right below his name. And what is your Instagram out loud? Can we say that?
Yeah, it's Rudy Daniel 8.
Rudy
It's very
Daniel 8,
simple.
so they can find you on Instagram as well. Connect with Rudy and take an opportunity to improve your life in a mindful way. And one more thing before you all go, have a great day, have a great week, and thanks for being part of the community.
Thanks for listening to this episode of One More Thing Before You Go. Check out our website at beforeyougopodcast.com. You can find us as well as subscribe to the program and rate us on your favorite podcast listening platform.